How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the Winners Club podcast. Now, if you are new here, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on bell notifications so that you are always notified of when we upload. You can also follow our socials. The link will be down in the description below. We post short-term content over there. We appreciate all your love and support. Now, let's get into today's freestyle.
All right, we're live, baby.
Yes, sir.
All right. What are we talking about today?
Mental health.
Mental health in general. We could just talk about whatever. I think it's a great topic and something that needs to be talked about more. Like a year ago, my whole perspective on mental health really changed, and I started really identifying, I guess, what psychological health even really is. I mean, when I think of health and you think of gym class and all that shit, you just think of your physical health. But the health in your mind, honestly, is the most important thing, because your thoughts translate into actions, and if you're not really thinking clearly, your actions and all these other things aren't going to be up to date. You know what I mean? If you are constantly feeling tired and you constantly are having headaches, I mean, it kind of stems from your psychological needs, not your physical needs. You know what I mean? I don't think there's really any such thing as a headache.
Yeah, it's more so, that's a very interesting perspective, because now that you said that, I'm sort of thinking about it. It's more so, it's on you. You're filling your mind with all this. I feel like the way headaches are created is just by overwhelming and stress that you're sort of feeding within your mind, and not like, and just like leaving it bottled up pretty much.
It's a bunch of like static thoughts, I feel.
Yeah. And I think people get stuck in that mode, and that's just, subconsciously it'll continue throughout the day, and then it turns into like, habitual thought patterns of just negativity, what it is. So, yeah. But I mean, for me, depression, I think everyone experiences some depression, and it comes in, I think, many forms. For me, if people want to change, you can't go to 0 to 100, like how you always say. You more so, it takes time dealing with it, and I think there's many ways of dealing with it.
I fully agree. I think everybody in their life is bound to experience some sort of depression. They will experience a period in their lives where things are not going to plan. Les Brown is like one of the best people at describing it and kind of making you feel understood with the words he says. It's the feeling of being stuck and you don't know your next move. It's very frustrating, it's very aggravating, it's saddening, maddening, whole bunch of shit. And I think it's bound to happen to everybody. The people who feel that depression will not affect them are just ignorant. Because it's bound to happen. Your actions have consequences. You know what I mean? When I felt my, I guess, perspective of mental health significantly change, it was after I had a depression. And now that I've gotten clarity on it, I understand why I fell into that. You know what I mean? It was because of my actions. And I think a large part in why people feel depression is in their own individual control. They're just not consciously aware of how they, fell down that path. Obviously, there's chemical imbalances in the brain where synapses aren't meeting and the right neurons aren't transmitting. But I would definitely say that if you have a depression, do not look to make excuses into furthering poor behavioral habits. I think just taking a step back, feeling it, and, understanding that this is a temporary thing. And I know it's very hard, but to surround yourself with empathetic people, or people in general who, I guess, are in the behavioral aspects of mental health, like therapists and stuff like that, seeking some sort of help if the people in your immediate environment cannot provide you with that. For me, I sought and I encouraged Miles to do it too, was therapy, and that really really helped me because I was able to just kind of get shit off my chest, and I feel like everybody needs that. A lot of people are reluctant and scared of it because it's like, whoa, like I'm not gonna just pour everything out to people that I don't know. But that's the beauty in it because everything is confidential and they don't even know who you are. They just hear your story and you feel a lot better.
Yeah, to add to that too, I mean, when my brother passed away in 8th grade, um, I went to grief counseling and I looked at it at first sort of like, am I different going into this? You know, like, am I going to be made fun of for seeking help by my friends, family? But in reality, I think hearing a different perspective, taking advice is really key to then have you um, sort of take control and take that advice and like get out of that sort of situation, depression, what it may be.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
inspirational. It's inspirational to hear how other people overcome their obstacles. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When I had something significant happen to me, I went to a group therapy, and I'm not gonna go into details, but there was this one woman that really changed my perspective on life in general. Um, she was in group. Everybody had their own reasons. Um, she was in it particularly because she lost two of her sons to suicide and then just went through a horrible divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept going, and that was very, very inspirational for me. And I wouldn't be half the person I am today without ever even meeting her. You know what I mean? Just
Mm-hmm.
because that small little interaction really changed and shifted my perspective, like what you were hinting at, Brett. Miles, I know you had a similar relating experience to what we're kind of talking about. So, what you think?
Yeah, no, I think, my perspective has changed too, like a lot, ever since being out of depression. And I completely agree with like people trying to stay on bad habits when they're depressed because they're depressed. Like they're using it as an excuse because they're depressed. And I'm not gonna lie, it's almost like an addiction. Like, because I kind of used to do the same thing. Like when I was depressed, I used to act out of anger a lot,
Mm.
and like I never really, I knew it wasn't right, but once again, I used me being depressed as an excuse to act a certain way, which of course, obviously, is never the answer. Um, I'm gonna go back to what you were saying about therapy. Therapy is a great thing, and Brett, like you said, like when I first started doing therapy, it was like, am I different? Like, are people gonna look at me weird? And I think everybody needs therapy, like Ryan said. Whether it's even if you don't have depression, I just think therapy is just good for people, just so you can go and talk to somebody, like you said, confidential about your problems, and people that give you positive feedback all the time, not people that shit on you, about your problems. Because that's another thing. Like I also used to relay a lot of information to people, and they wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't say like shit on me, but like they wouldn't help, causing me to continue to do bad stuff because I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting any form of positive interaction. So it's like, it's gonna, I guess influence me to continue doing negative stuff. So, which is once again what I think everybody needs to do therapy because to be honest, dude, talking to your parents really isn't always the answer. Like, yeah, you could tell your mom, you could tell your dad. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like when I first started going to therapy, like my dad really wasn't on board with it, like 100%. So like stuff like that, it's still like it still affects us, as we go through it. So I definitely think therapy was one of my best choices in my depression. But ever since I've been out, I've had a completely different mindset, like you were saying before. So
100%, bro. I couldn't agree more. And I also think, I mean, like, everybody's going through shit. Everybody's got some kind of weight on their shoulders, some kind of uncomfort that they're dealing with, or discomfort for that matter. Um, Obviously, it can range from more severe to non-severe, but I think it also just really helps with learning how to manage stress when you're able to talk and communicate about it. It obviously improves communicational skills. Um, but that's another thing is I think a lot of people really let shit build up and don't address it, thinking that it's
Mm.
just gonna evaporate. But that's the exact wrong thing to do, and I'll tell you why. Because think of it like Jenga blocks. You move one Jenga block out and it starts shaking a little bit. You think, oh, it's fine. It's fine. Then you do it again and it starts shaking. You do it again and eventually it's going to come crashing down. It's just inevitable. That's kind of how our, I guess, emotions work in our limbic system in our brain. The more that we push shit off, quote unquote, the more that we're just furthering potential damage into our limbic system later on in the future. For me, I was always someone who would always go like, yeah, I'll just do that later. I'll just feel that later. I'll just whatever that later. Got blindsided with the depression and it messed me up a little bit. It was hard to come back from. I'm not gonna lie. And dealing with I guess poor mental health and depression, symptoms of depression. I think depression is it's a very loose term nowadays. People are very quick to diagnose themselves, self-diagnose for that matter. But there's a fine line between feeling sad and clinically being depressed. I was clinically depressed, so it was very hard to come back from. And now that I have come back from it, I've really changed my perspective on life. It was almost like a near-death experience. But that's another thing I want to talk about is how loosely the term is thrown around. Because when you say it, you kind of believe it. You know what I mean? If you say you're depressed over and over and over again, like I say, it's almost like it's like reading out loud. It's like studying out loud. It's going to sit in your subconscious. So if you're saying, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I'm really, really sad. You're telling yourself how to feel rather than telling yourself how to feel in a more positive manner, uplift yourself, not just shit on yourself. So I think a lot of people are very quick to say that they are depressed and have depression when all that's really going on is that they feel sad. They feel unmotivated. But that's not what depression is. Obviously, dealing with grief and other things, that's a whole nother ballpark. How would you guys classify that, though? What I'm trying to say. Like, would you say that a lot of people do that?
So yeah, I think a lot of people do just jump to the conclusion of that depression. I think to me, it's sort of their perspective on that emotion that they're experiencing, whether it's sad, anger, and I think most people nowadays, I know we also encourage people to adopt healthy systems. And I think if you have healthy systems, that sort of prepares you to, if you were to experience something that's out of your control, you can handle it better. And I think another thing as well is having sort of self-confidence within yourself, saying positive affirmations and always having a one-on-one with your thoughts, whether that's through journal, self-talk, whatever it is. I believe taking a step back and looking at what am I actually thinking about throughout the day and journaling. I encourage a lot of people to do that because I can say myself that's helped me. Gibby, you got me starting to do it, and I'll never stop doing it. So
journaling is a phenomenal tool because it allows you to have a conversation with yourself and kind of let things out. You know what I mean? It's very helpful when you have like a physical release of energy. For me, I tend to write really aggressively when I'm journaling, when I'm stressed out, but it's just my way of, letting it out, and it's very, very good. And then it's so much more rewarding when you go back and you reread those journals on those tough days and realize your survival rate is actually 100%. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I really mess with journaling though, because I just like to, when I'm feeling unmotivated, I go back and I look and reread over those, shitty days. I kind of like bookmark them. I'll write in pen. Usually that's just a way I can do it. When I'm having a bad day, that way I can go back, reread it, and understand that I got through that, and I can get through whatever, obstacle comes my way next. But I want to briefly talk real quick about something, and then Miles, I'll let you talk because I'm talking.
I was about to cut you off too. Yeah.
I just want to just talk real quick about my research that I'm doing in school. about mental health, and Brett couldn't have said it better. Basically summed it up already, but I'll just give a quick overview. I'm conducting my own individual research right now at school about mental health and how I believe depression, clinical depression, is even formed, um, neurologically at least, disregarding a chemical imbalance. So I believe we have two kind of um, consciousness. Did I say that right? Consciousnesses? I
Yeah.
don't know. Okay. The conscious and the unconscious. You know what I mean? Your
Hmm.
conscious is kind of going to respond to the things that are out of your individual control that just happen. Um, you can't really do anything about it. It's like a death. It's like um, a breakup, any kind of grief, I guess. Then your subconscious is everything else. But those are the things that you can control that you're just not aware of. Um, Bad habits, poor influences, you're not eating right, you're not getting enough quality sunlight, you're on your phone too much. It's excessive things that just kind of blunder your brain. So I like to picture it like like it's like a bar graph, you know what I mean? But two bars. And those two bars, they can tally up to 200%, so 100% each. Okay?
Hmm.
The goal is to keep them as low as possible because if they reach up to 100% on each, they'll obviously touch to 200, but 200% is suicide in my eyes. So it's very, very important to keep your subconscious very, very low because your subconscious, if it's high, you're not going to see it coming. So when this one, the conscious one, rises up, this one's already here. You know what I mean? So it's very, very scary. Rather, if this one's low and this one does get high, you can bring this down by having this one low. Does that make sense? Your
Hmm.
subconscious influences your conscious in a way, or in a sense.
Mm.
So, like Brett said, if you have healthy systems and you regulate your unconscious in a healthier way and you create beneficial habits, you have good influences in your life, healthy relationships, you get enough quality sunlight, good diet, you never have to worry about your conscious because your subconscious is always going to be low. Am I making it? Am I sounding more clear? I know you guys have both heard this probably 1,000 times from me, but in terms of for like our audience, is that understandable? A little
I
bit,
believe
a little
so.
bit.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll give an example of someone who maybe, let's say, is very high risk of suicide. I believe certain people too, they mask it with certain stimulus, whether that's music,
Hmm.
bad eating habits, like eating a bunch of candy, and just, maybe watching a lot of social media, TikTok,
Staying in
YouTube.
bed, avoiding sunlight is another one I picked up on.
Exactly. And I believe with that, you're just at a higher risk of that. But if you had healthy systems, like maybe, let's say, having a good diet, getting enough sunlight, daily reading, working out can be a good stimulus. Not for everybody,
Oh,
but for some
100%.
people.
Improving physical health.
Because I believe, too, if you're improving physically, you're also going to improve it mentally. So I think if you just have those sort of healthy systems, getting enough sunlight, stuff like that, the risk goes completely down to very slim. So
Hmm.
go ahead, Miles, if you wanted to say add in, go right
I'm
ahead.
gonna go way back to what Gibby was talking about
Probably.
before about what was it? It was people tossing the term around, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
People
Okay, all
loosely
right.
saying it.
Yeah. So I do agree with what Brett said, how it's kind of like an impulse almost. Like the moment you feel sad, you immediately associate that with depression. And I mainly noticed that it's more common in like kids that are in like middle school, so like probably like that sixth to like eighth grade range.
Mm.
Even like leading into high school, like a little bit. I noticed that too, cause I'm not gonna lie, like dude, I've been there before too. That like fake depression, that like don't hit me up shit, like
Oh
you
my
know, like,
God,
but like no, but you
Oh,
see
yeah,
like
bullshit.
no, but like it happens though. Like that's where kids immediately associate, depression, with just, kind of like an impulse of sadness because like a girl said no to, you asking her out on a date. I don't know, something like so simple. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate, especially like with social media. Like Brett mentioned before, like music, right? You hear rappers like Juice World and like other, I don't know, other artists that talk about depression, right? Like talking about, doing all these drugs and how like they're depressed. Like, and kids listen to these things, so they think like sadness, like the moment they're sad, right? It's immediate depression, and that goes a long way, especially if you get into it at like sixth grade, like I said, seventh grade, eighth grade. You're gonna grow up like if nobody helps you, like if you don't go get help, right, and get told by the right people about like depression and get educated on it properly, they're
Mm.
like until somebody really checks them, they're automatically gonna associate sadness with depression, no matter how grown up they get. It gets worse as they get older too, because like they got to deal with more stuff. So the more inconveniences that come down the road, it's automatically just like depression, 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 until that depression actually comes, and then like we were saying before, that is a higher rate of suicide by that point because you automatically associate it with depression. Then when the depression actually hits you, like if you don't know how to act out of impulse sadness, right? Like if you act out of emotion out of that, and depression comes around, that's a high risk of suicide, in my opinion. And once again, I don't think media helps with it, nowadays, like the sad TikTok slideshows and all that sad music, like the TikTok edits and all that shit. Like how kids immediately jump to looking at that, saying it helps when it doesn't. So I definitely think it's thrown around way too much to answer your question. And, some ways to fix that is building healthier systems, like you guys said, staying off your phone, getting enough sunlight, all that kind of good stuff, going to therapy, you know, stuff like that. Talking to somebody that's educated on it. But yeah, that's what I think.
I think depending on the, I guess like the severity of what you're feeling, I don't think you have to go to therapy. I guess like if you already have semi-healthy systems. I mean, if you want to go and you have always like if you have things that are constantly coming up and you always feel the need to talk to somebody about it, by
Yeah,
all
that's
means,
what I
go
mean.
ahead. Depends on
Yeah,
the severity. But I'm a firm believer that you feel the way you feel because of yourself and you put yourself in that position. It's the cold truth. I mean, this is disregarding people who have clinical depression, have a chemical imbalance in their brain, and obviously can be dealing with grief and stuff like that. I mean, the people like Miles talked about that loosely say that they're depressed and sad. Newsflash, man, it's your fault. Like, I know it sounds cruel and harsh to say that, but it's just the cold truth. I mean, if you lay in bed all day on your phone and you wonder why you have a headache, feel sorry for yourself, that's the reason why. Um,
I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. It's funny. I don't know if you guys ever see jokes about people like making jokes about parents, like when a kid is like feeling a certain way, and they're like, "It's because you're always on that damn phone," right? I used to laugh at that, thinking like, "Ah, like whatever, like it's just a joke, right?" But now that I think about it, like it's really because you're always on your fucking phone.
1000%, bro. That's some true
I
shit. And
I never
think
looked
about
at it that way, but
our
Mm.
parents grew up with very limited media use, especially phones. Phones came out when we were young, so they were still, I mean, had how many years of life? Probably 30 on an average. 30 years of life without this. You know what I mean? So they can distinguish what I guess are the causalities of our issues are. So like it's very important to listen to parents when they give you advice like that because they have seen a whole world where media was not as accessible, not as popular, not even around. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a very good point that you said, Miles. Now I'm gonna jump all the way up to what I was saying before
Mhm.
about kind of like my hypothesis still. Um,
gosh, we're
about
bringing
so
it back to the first episode. Yes,
I know, I
sir.
know. So we briefly talked about this in our first episode, and I worded it fucking horribly. But um, what I'm trying to get at though is when you're I'm gonna visualize this bar graph again for you. So your subconscious is high, all right, and when your conscious gets up high, what happens is it kind of hits you out of nowhere. This feeling of intense gray fog that you just can't shake off. Normally you can shake it off within a couple weeks, but this one you can't. I'm kind of describing what depression feels like.
Mm.
you will not second guess what it feels like. You will know when it hits you. I can promise you that. It's almost like you will know when you reach success or you reach any kind of goal. You'll understand that feeling. Imagine that, but in a horrible way, negative, you know. It's embedded in your mind that you are depressed. You want to end your life. That's typically one of the first thoughts that happens or that occurs. And you can't pull yourself out of it. And now, when you're this high, how are you going to bring this down? You know what I mean? Like, when you're this intense, what motives are there for you to pull yourself down? You know what I mean? So, like, that's why I guess having healthy relationships with people is actually one of the most important things, because at least they can help ground you a bit and be there for you. That's what really, really helped me, was that I was able to luckily still have healthy relationships with my mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, you guys. So I was able to find a way to come back down. But not a lot of people have that, you know what I mean? And it's a very intense feeling. It's super, super uncomfortable. And it's something, though, that you don't just throw that label around. And I'm trying to just, I guess, terminate the stigma of depression and sadness. Because when you're sad, basically what's happening is that there's two things. This one's going up and this one's down, or flip-flopped. That's it. You know what I mean? But when you're depressed, they're both up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very dangerous when they're both up, because obviously 200% is suicide, and nobody wants to see that. It's horrible.
I also think too, people are labeling, like we said this throughout this whole episode, people are labeling certain situations with depression when it might not be even depression at all. Let's say I'm on the highway, I get a flat tire. Oh, I act out angry, sad, but I believe if you have a positive attitude in any situation, it'll help better the situation, and not only that, better you throughout life in general.
Well, because it's like a habit that you're establishing. It's a lot easier said than done to do that. But for me, I study Stoicism because I learned a lot about Marcus Aurelius, and he was an ancient philosopher, and he preaches that. He preaches that do not act out of emotion, one, and two, things will always occur. It's just the law of nature. Just always have, I guess, a clear mind for them, and be present within the moment, because that is happening from the dictation of God. God's doing this to test you. You know what I mean? So, like Brett, for instance, if somebody were to lash out in a road rage incident where obviously, you know, you don't even get your car scratched or anything, there's plenty of times where somebody will just cut somebody off or miscommunicate. People will lose their minds. Another example is video games. People will literally break monitors, consoles, controllers, remotes, just because they died. The game glitched, whatever, you know what I mean? But that has a lot to do, like I said, with the stamina levels. Your subconscious is a lot higher than you may think, and that's why you're acting out that way, because it took one little conscious engagement that was a miscommunication or misalignment, and you don't even know that this is up here. You know what I mean? So that's why you're acting like that. But now, think for an example, a significant death in the family, a very bad breakup. Just give me, like, I don't know, like a really bad accident, something like that, really bad illness. And now it's like, whoa, this hit me way harder than I would have thought. You know what I mean? But it's because this is all the way up here, and now gradually this was building up.
We hope you enjoyed today's listen of the new Winners Club podcast episode. And again, if you are new here, please hit that subscribe button, and as well turn on bell notifications so you're always notified of when we upload. We appreciate all your love and support. We hope you all have a lovely day and a great week. Until next time.